a young man obsessed with cleanliness, battling a phobia that controls every aspect of his life. Now, imagine a free-spirited girl whose chaotic world is the complete opposite of his. When Gustavo, an unwavering perfectionist, and Brena, a charmingly disorganized girl, are forced to work together, sparks fly and worlds collide. But what happens when Gustavo's meticulous order meets Brena's vibrant chaos? And how can a paralyzing phobia be overcome by the power of love? Get ready for an exciting journey of transformation and triumph, where beauty emerges from imperfection and an unexpected romance blossoms. What happens after these two meet will surprise you, so stay until the end. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and activate the bell to not miss the upcoming videos. Gustavo was not your typical young man. Handsome and successful, he seemed to have it all. But beneath his charming exterior lay a deep-seated fear that controlled his every move, his phobia of germs. This fear wasn't just a minor quirk, it was an obsession that dictated his life. Every surface had to be spotless, every item in its place, and any hint of dirt sent him spiraling into anxiety. To cope with his fears and turn his obsession into something productive, Gustavo founded his own cleaning company. He dedicated himself to providing the most thorough cleaning services in town, catering to clients who appreciated his meticulous nature. His employees were rigorously trained to meet his exacting standards, ensuring that every job was done to perfection. Gustavo's daily routine was a series of carefully orchestrated rituals. From the moment he woke up, he sanitized every inch of his surroundings. His mornings began with a thorough cleaning of his apartment, followed by an equally meticulous preparation for his day at work. Even at his office, he was never without his trusty disinfectant wipes and hand sanitizer. His phobia had kept him isolated in many ways. Relationships were difficult to maintain when he couldn't bear the thought of physical contact. Friends drifted away, unable to understand the extent of his condition. Gustavo's world was clean and orderly, but it was also lonely. Despite his challenges, Gustavo's business thrived. His clients admired his dedication to cleanliness, and his company quickly became the go-to service for those seeking immaculate homes and offices. But while his professional life flourished, his personal life remained untouched by the warmth of human connection. One day, Gustavo found himself short-staffed and in need of a new employee. Little did he know, this would set the stage for a change that would turn his world upside down. Enter Brena, a whirlwind of energy and chaos wrapped up in a perpetually worn hoodie. With a spirit as free as the wind, she was the complete opposite of everything Gustavo valued. Brena had recently snagged a job at Gustavo's cleaning company, driven by her relentless work ethic and the need to make ends meet. She juggled two jobs, barely finding time for herself, let alone romance. From the moment Brena stepped into the office, it was clear she was different. Her wild curls bounced as she walked, and her infectious smile lit up the room. Despite her disheveled appearance, there was something undeniably captivating about her. Her clothes, often a mismatched array of comfort and practicality, spoke of someone who valued function over form. Her hoodie, practically a uniform at this point, seemed to have stories of its own. Gustavo noticed her immediately, though not for reasons you might expect. To him, Brena represented chaos, an element he had spent his entire life avoiding. Her desk quickly became a cluttered mess, her cleaning techniques were far from his meticulous standards, and she seemed to be constantly running late. Yet, there was a spark in Brena that Gustavo couldn't ignore. Her hard work and dedication shone through her disorganization. She approached every task with an enthusiasm that was both baffling and inspiring. She laughed easily, joked with her colleagues, and seemed to bring a sense of life and warmth wherever she went. Gustavo watched from a distance, intrigued and irritated in equal measure. He found himself drawn to her in ways he couldn't quite understand. Her carefree nature was a stark contrast to his rigid control, and despite himself, he started to see the beauty in her spontaneity. One day, as Brena was bustling around the office, she noticed Gustavo standing by the door, observing her. She flashed him a bright smile and waved. "Hey boss, need anything cleaned up?" she asked, her tone playful yet sincere. Caught off guard by her directness, Gustavo managed a small nod. "Actually, yes. "Can you come to my office?" As Brena followed him, she couldn't help but notice the tension in his shoulders, the way he seemed to be constantly on edge. She wondered what it was like to live with such a fear of the world around him. Little did she know, their paths were about to intertwine in ways that would challenge both their worlds, blending cleanliness with chaos and perhaps finding a perfect balance. From the very beginning, the clash between Gustavo and Brena was inevitable. Gustavo's need for order and cleanliness was constantly at odds with Brena's carefree and somewhat chaotic nature. Their first meeting in Gustavo's office set the tone for what was to come. Brena walked into the pristine space, her eyes widening at the immaculate organization. Every item was in its place, and the faint scent of disinfectant lingered in the air. Gustavo stood behind his spotless desk, his expression a mix of curiosity and caution. "Brena," he began, his voice steady but firm, "I need to talk to you about your cleaning methods." Brena raised an eyebrow, a playful smile tugging at her lips. "Sure, boss. What about them?" Gustavo hesitated, unsure how to convey his concerns without sounding overly critical. "Your approach is different. We have certain standards here, and it's important that we meet them." Brena nodded, her smile fading slightly. "I get it. I'll try to be more careful." But it wasn't just about being careful. Brena's natural tendency to dive into tasks with enthusiasm often led to minor oversights. Dust left on a shelf, a smudge on a window. To Gustavo, these were glaring imperfections, but to Brena, they were part of the job, to be fixed as she moved along. The tension between them grew with each interaction. Gustavo's frustration with Brena's methods became more evident, while Brena struggled to understand his need for such strict control. Their conversations were peppered with moments of conflict, each trying to navigate the other's world. One afternoon, the conflict came to a head. Brena had just finished cleaning one of the offices when Gustavo walked in for an inspection. He immediately noticed a few spots she had missed and pointed them out, his tone sharper than he intended. "Brena, you missed these areas. We can't afford to overlook details," he said, his voice strained with frustration. Brena sighed, wiping her forehead with the back of her hand. "I know, Gustavo, but I'm doing my best. It's not like I'm trying to mess things up." Gustavo ran a hand through his hair, trying to calm himself. "I know you are, but this isn't just about doing your best. It's about meeting the standards we've set." Brena crossed her arms, a defensive look in her eyes. "Maybe your standards are just too high. Not everyone can live up to them." The room fell silent, the weight of their words hanging in the air. Gustavo stared at Brena, her defiance both infuriating and intriguing. He realized then that she was right. His standards were high, perhaps impossibly so, but he couldn't help it. His fear of germs and need for control were deeply ingrained, shaping his every action. As they stood there, both grappling with their own frustrations, something shifted. Brena saw the strain in Gustavo's eyes, the pressure he put on himself to maintain perfection, and Gustavo saw the determination in Brena, her unwavering commitment to doing her job despite the challenges. It was in these moments of conflict that they began to truly see each other. The barriers they had built started to crack, allowing glimpses of understanding and empathy to filter through. They were two very different people, each struggling with their own battles, yet somehow, their paths had crossed for a reason. Gustavo took a deep breath, his voice softer. "Let's find a way to make this work, Brena. Together." Brena nodded, her expression softening. "Yeah, let's do that." And so, amidst the tension and conflict, a fragile bond began to form, hinting at the potential for something more. Gustavo's office was a sanctuary of order and cleanliness, a stark contrast to the bustling chaos that often surrounded Brena. One evening, as they both worked late to meet a tight deadline, the tension between them began to dissolve, revealing the beginnings of an unexpected connection. The night was quiet, the office illuminated by the soft glow of desk lamps. Gustavo, meticulously organizing files, couldn't help but notice Brena's determined focus as she tackled a particularly challenging cleaning task. She was humming a tune, completely absorbed in her work, and for the first time, Gustavo saw beyond the disarray. He saw her dedication, her resilience, and something else, an undeniable spark that intrigued him. "Brena," he called out, breaking the silence. She looked up, surprised to see Gustavo standing there, holding 2 steaming mugs of coffee. "I thought you might need a break," he said, offering her a cup. She smiled, taking the coffee with a grateful nod. "Thanks, Gustavo. I could definitely use this." They sat down together, the air filled with the comforting aroma of coffee. For a moment, they just enjoyed the silence, sipping their drinks. Then, Brena broke the ice. "You know, I used to think you were just a neat freak," she said, her tone light but honest. "But I see now that it's more than that. You're really passionate about what you do." Gustavo chuckled, a rare sound that made Brena's heart flutter. "I've always been this way," he admitted. "Cleanliness and order help me feel in control. It's my way of managing everything." Brena nodded, understanding. "We all have our ways of coping. For me, it's staying busy, juggling jobs, and not having time to think too much." Gustavo looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the tiredness in her eyes, the weight she carried. "You work so hard, Brena. I've noticed. It can't be easy." She shrugged, trying to play it off. "It's life. You do what you have to do. But honestly, working here has been a good change. Even with your high standards," she added with a teasing grin. Gustavo smiled, appreciating her humor. "I've learned a lot from you, you know. About flexibility, about not letting fear dictate everything." Brena was taken aback. "Really? I always thought I was just driving you crazy." "You do," he said, laughing, "but in a good way. You've helped me see things differently." The connection between them was palpable, a shared understanding that went beyond words. They sat there, talking about their lives, their dreams, and their fears. Brena shared stories of her childhood, her aspirations of one day finding stability and peace. Gustavo opened up about his phobia, how it had shaped his life, and the isolation it brought. As the night wore on, they found themselves inching closer, their hands brushing accidentally and sending jolts of electricity through them both. There was an undeniable chemistry, a magnetic pull that neither could ignore. "Brena," Gustavo said softly, his voice filled with sincerity, "I'm glad you're here. You bring something special to this place, to my life." She felt a warmth spread through her at his words. "I'm glad to be here too, Gustavo, and I'm glad to know you." In that quiet office, amidst files and cleaning supplies, an unexpected connection blossomed. It was a moment of vulnerability, of honesty, and of burgeoning affection. Gustavo and Brena, 2 souls from different worlds, found themselves on the brink of something new and beautiful, a connection that promised to change their lives forever. As Gustavo and Brena continued to work together, the initial conflicts gave way to deeper challenges, both personal and professional. Gustavo's struggle with his germ phobia was a constant battle, influencing every aspect of his life. Meanwhile, Brena's chaotic lifestyle often clashed with the high standards Gustavo set for his cleaning company. One particularly challenging day began with a major contract for a high-profile client. Gustavo's anxiety was at an all-time high, knowing the importance of the job. Brena, as always, approached the task with her usual enthusiasm, determined to prove herself. They arrived at the client's mansion, an imposing structure that gleamed with potential. Gustavo's meticulous planning was evident in the way he delegated tasks, ensuring every detail was covered. Brena, though still adapting to Gustavo's exacting standards, worked diligently, her spirit undeterred by the enormity of the task. Halfway through the day, disaster struck. Brena accidentally knocked over a vase, sending shards and water across the pristine marble floor. Gustavo's heart raced as he saw the mess, his fear of germs intensifying the situation. "Brena!" he exclaimed, his voice tight with panic. "We can't afford mistakes like this." Brena, feeling the weight of her error, quickly gathered the broken pieces. "I'm so sorry, Gustavo. I'll clean it up right away." Gustavo took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "It's not just about cleaning it up. We need to ensure everything is perfect. The client expects the best." Brena nodded, her determination unwavering. "I understand. I'll make it right." Despite the setback, Brena worked tirelessly to restore order. Her resilience shone through as she meticulously cleaned the area, ensuring every shard was removed and the floor was spotless. Gustavo, though still on edge, couldn't help but admire her dedication. As the day progressed, another challenge emerged. The client requested an additional area to be cleaned, one that wasn't part of the original plan. Gustavo's anxiety spiked at the thought of deviating from his carefully laid-out schedule. Brena stepped in, her confidence unshaken. "We can handle it, Gustavo. Let's divide the tasks and get it done." Together, they tackled the unexpected challenge. Brena's adaptability and Gustavo's attention to detail proved to be a powerful combination. By the end of the day, the client's mansion was immaculate, exceeding even Gustavo's high standards. Back at the office, Gustavo and Brena sat down, exhausted but triumphant. "Today was tough," Gustavo admitted, his voice tinged with fatigue. "But we did it." Brena smiled, her eyes reflecting her determination. "Yeah, we did. And we'll keep doing it, one challenge at a time." Their partnership had faced numerous tests, but each obstacle only strengthened their bond. Gustavo began to see beyond Brena's chaotic exterior, recognizing the brilliance and resilience within her. And Brena saw the vulnerability behind Gustavo's obsession with cleanliness, understanding the fears that drove him. One evening, as they were closing up the office, Brena turned to Gustavo with a thoughtful expression. "You know, Gustavo, I think we make a pretty good team." Gustavo looked at her, a small smile playing on his lips. "I think you're right, Brena. We do." Their journey was far from over, but they had proven that together they could overcome any challenge. And as they faced the future, they knew that their growing connection would only make them stronger. As time went on, the bond between Gustavo and Brena deepened, evolving from professional respect into something far more profound. Their daily interactions, once fraught with tension, became moments of connection and growth. Gustavo's rigid routines began to soften under Brena's influence, while Brena found herself inspired by Gustavo's dedication and discipline. One evening, after a particularly challenging day, they decided to take a break and grab dinner together. Sitting in a cozy corner of a small, bustling restaurant, they talked about their lives, dreams, and fears. It was a rare moment of vulnerability for both of them. "Gustavo," Brena began, twirling her fork in her pasta, "do you ever wish things were different? Like, if you didn't have this fear holding you back?" Gustavo looked at her, his eyes reflecting the weight of her question. "All the time," he admitted. "It's exhausting, constantly worrying about germs, about things being perfect. But it's all I've ever known." Brena reached across the table, placing her hand over his. "You know, you're stronger than you think. You've built this amazing company, and you help so many people. That takes a lot of courage." Gustavo felt a warmth spread through him at her words. "And you, Brena, you face challenges every day with such a positive attitude. You've taught me so much about resilience and adaptability." Their eyes locked, and in that moment, something shifted. The barriers they'd built around themselves began to crumble, replaced by an undeniable connection. It was more than just mutual respect. It was a deep, growing affection. As the weeks passed, their relationship blossomed. Gustavo found himself looking forward to their time together, whether it was working side by side or simply sharing a meal. Brena's presence brought a sense of calm to his once chaotic mind, and he began to take small steps toward confronting his phobia. One day, Brena surprised Gustavo with an invitation. "I want to show you something," she said, a mischievous glint in her eyes. They drove to a local community center where Brena volunteered on weekends. She led him to a garden, vibrant with flowers and plants. "This place helps me relax and feel grounded," she explained. "I thought it might help you too." Gustavo was hesitant at first, but as they walked through the garden, he felt a sense of peace wash over him. Brena showed him how to tend to the plants, encouraging him to get his hands dirty, a concept that once would have terrified him. To his surprise, Gustavo found the experience liberating. It was a small step, but it felt monumental. As they worked together, Brena's laughter and encouragement gave him the strength to push past his fears. Their relationship continued to flourish, each of them growing and transforming in ways they hadn't imagined. Gustavo's world, once confined by his phobia, expanded with Brena by his side. He started to see the beauty in imperfection, learning to embrace the messiness of life. One evening, as they were cleaning up after a long day, Gustavo turned to Brena, a serious look in his eyes. "Brena, I need to tell you something." Brena looked up, sensing the gravity of the moment. "What is it?" "I love you," Gustavo said, his voice steady and sincere. "You've changed my life in so many ways. You've helped me face my fears and see the world differently. I can't imagine my life without you." Tears welled up in Brena's eyes as she smiled, stepping closer to him. "I love you too, Gustavo. You've shown me what it means to be dedicated and strong. Together, we've become better versions of ourselves." They embraced, holding each other tightly, knowing that their journey was just beginning. The love they had found was transformative, not just for their relationship, but for their individual lives as well. With Brena by his side, Gustavo felt ready to face any challenge, and Brena knew that with Gustavo, she had found a partner who truly understood and supported her. Their love story was one of growth, resilience, and transformation, proof that sometimes the most unexpected connections can lead to the most beautiful changes.